Greetings Exiles, BullShifter here, back with another Path of Exile PS4 tutorial video. Today I'm going to be covering 12 different game options and controls that the game may not have explained to you. Now we're starting off here in the opening screen as one of my biggest tips starts here. So at number 12, if you go ahead and hit triangle for options and go to gateway, you can actually change what server you're on. So this is a great way to manually change your server if you notice that just the one that it's picking for you automatically may not be correct, or if you're just having some problems with lag in general. So do keep in mind that throughout this video I am going to be going through 12 tips total, including the one that I had just shown you. They're not in any particular order, they're just 12 things that I think people may find useful. Some of these I have covered in other videos, so you may have seen some of these before, but since they were buried within other content, I wanted to just make an individual video kind of showcasing these different options and controls that the game just may not have explained to you, and if they did, it may have glossed over it too quickly for it to really sink in and be useful. So we're just going to kind of wait through this loading screen here. That's kind of the downside of me showing you that tip first, is we get to load into the game now. Which this shouldn't take too much longer. Here we go. Now, the next tip I do want to show you pertains to the trade market and the skill tree. I've gone over this a little bit in my trade market video. However, this pertains to actually finding specific items. So, when you go to enter in keywords, let's just look at boots. That should be fine. So when you hit L3 and left on the D-pad to bring up search options, if you actually put in quotations around everything, it'll actually search for exactly what is in the quotations. So that'll actually be helpful for if you're, looking for an increased fire damage item as opposed to, increased fire resistance. Because if you just type in fire and damage without those quotations, it's going to bring up every different thing that has, the word damage in it and fire in it. Now, this also pertains to if you go into your passive tree and hit L3 and the left stick, you can actually search for specific nodes the exact same way. So if I go to, let's say, life regen, and surround that with quotations, if I zoom out, it's actually going to flash all the different nodes that have life regen in them. So just a quick little trick for you to actually be able to have an easier time of creating builds on the fly and search for specific nodes that may be close to the nodes that you're already building. At number 10, another little trick here is to hit triangle on gems to lock their levels. So you see this little lock right here on this gem. That's because I've hit triangle to essentially make it so that gem doesn't level up. Now, there's multiple reasons why you may want to do this. One of the biggest reasons is for when you're using a cast when damage taken support gem. So what this gem does, it's pretty self-explanatory. When you take a certain amount of damage, it's going to trigger the skills that are attached to it. Now, the reason why you may want to lock this and the other skills around it, you'll want to lock cast when damage taken, because as this skill gem levels up, the amount of damage that you're going to have to take for it to trigger is also going to go up. So right now I have it at 661 damage. When I take 661 damage, it's going to cast Immortal Call, Efficacy Support, and Wave of Conviction. Now, I want it to stay at this level because I don't really want it to go much higher than 661 damage. However, with that, it's also only going to support skill gems that require level 42 or lower. So I have these locked as well because this one requires level 42, this one requires level 40 and will go over 42, and this one I will not actually have to lock because there's not a required skill gem level for that. So just another thing to keep in mind when you are looking at your skill gems. That's just a good way to also set things up. Now, the next little trick I want to show you here at number 9 is using L2 to attack in place. So as you can see, if I'm using my ice spear, I can, still, it stops you when you use it, but if I hold L2, no matter what direction I'm moving the stick in, I can't move. Now, it's not only useful for being able to attack in place, but it's also useful for if you're in an area where a lot of different items have dropped. You can actually hold L2 and use your X attack, and it'll prevent you from picking up items, and you'll only strictly be able to attack. At number 8, my next tip here is clicking R3. And if you look in the lower right-hand corner, it'll actually allow me to assign all of my different skill gems in here. Now, this is also pretty useful for when you're delving. I've had a lot of people ask on how you would assign dynamite and your flares. This is the only way to do that. So if I go into my actual skill tree, or my skills, I can assign from here. However, I can also just assign by using R3. Now, dynamite and flares won't show up on that other screen, but if I'm in the delve, they will show up down here. So that's actually the only way to assign those. Now, another useful tip, if you hit R3 and R2 at the same time, you can weapon swap. So some builds may require you to actually weapon swap to be able to use all of your different skill gems, because as you can see when I switch weapons, it gives me a different set of open skills that I'm able to use. So just another thing to keep in mind, that you can actually weapon swap while you are fighting. Something else that is very useful in the options menu, I believe this is tip 7, show full descriptions. By default, this will be toggled off. If you toggle it back on, when you go into different items within your inventory and click L3, it's actually going to show you, we'll go on a non-unique because it'll show a better example. You can actually see whether they're prefixes or suffix modifiers, and you can also see what tier those modifiers are. So it'll give you a good idea of if you've gotten good rolls on your items, and before you go and do any master crafting back at your base, it's going to give you a good idea of whether you're going to be able to craft a suffix or a prefix modifier onto your items. Keep in mind you can only have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. Now for my next couple of tips, we'll actually have to go take out a few monsters, because I'm going to show you how to actually inspect items that have dropped. This was not a good area to go to. So we'll just go to the Western Forest. So what I'm going to show you here is basically how the L3 button will interact with you while you're out in the wild. So this is actually going to cover a few tips here. So we just need to defeat some enemies. Now what you're probably going to see here is that there aren't any items on the ground. Oh, and I guess that's because they actually didn't drop anything. Okay, this guy should drop a few things. So, as you can see, right now, all that's on the ground is an Orb of Transmutation. Now, that's going to bring me to our 6th tip, which is a loot filter. So, if you go to the options and go all the way down, you can actually put loot filters on. Now, I'm not going to go into depth about everything that the loot filter covers, but basically the stricter your loot filter is, the less items you're going to see. It's intended so that as you go throughout the game, your game isn't getting flooded with a ton of different items on the ground, so you have an easier time being able to depict what is useful and what you can just run past. I'm currently running strict, so only relatively valuable items are going to show up for me. As you can see, Orb of Transmutation is a currency, so it's going to show that. Now, if I want to see the other items that are on the ground, and this will be tip number 5, I can hit the left stick in. And as you can see, I have a Raven Mask, an S-Stock, and gauntlets on the ground as well. They're being hidden by my loot filter. But if you hit L3 at any point, you can actually still see those items. Now, another thing to keep in mind while you're holding L3, you can also actually inspect the items themselves as you go over them. And it'll show you the different stats that are on those items as well. So let's actually go ahead. Let's pick this up. Oh, we can't actually. So let's go ahead. We'll identify this amulet and then drop it on the ground here. And if we have that advanced option set up and we hold L3, you can also see the tiers and whether they're prefix or suffix modifiers there as well while they're on the ground, which can help you determine what may be useful to pick up and what you may want to move past. So at tip number 4, and this also pertains to the left stick, if you look in the upper left-hand corner next to my mana bar, it's also going to show you what level you're at, what percentage you are towards your next level, your average experience per hour currently, and how much experience you have compared to how much you need for the next level. This can come in handy later on when you actually suffer that 10% penalty after you've killed Kitava in Act 10, so that you know exactly how much XP you need in order to hit your next level, and so you know how much XP you're going to be at if you do end up unfortunately dying. Now, tip 4, or is that tip 3? I've kind of lost count. We're just going to keep moving on. If you hit down on your D-pad, you can actually toggle between an overhead map and the circular mini-map in the corner. Now, also in regards to that, if you go into the options menu and go not into map transparency, but landscape transparency, that will actually control how dark the background on your map is. So if you're having trouble seeing, you can actually move that bar down and you'll be able to see yourself and your environment a bit better. However, if you're having trouble seeing the map, you can move it to the right and the map will become more visible than anything else. Now, along with that, if you go ahead and are near, and this will actually be our last tip here. I think I accidentally combined a few tips. We're going to have to move through and find the entryway into this area real quick. But I'm going to show you how to quickly reset an instance here. And now by resetting an instance, what I mean is the area that you're currently going to be going into, everything will be reset to where it'll basically be unlooted, nothing will be killed, everything will be brand new. So if you go to one of these gates and hit triangle, it'll give you the option to go into a new instance. Now you can also join other players' instances this way, if you want to play some, multiplayer with some random people, if there are people in that area. Otherwise, this is just a way to quickly reset the area that you're in. Now, there's multiple ways or multiple reasons why you may want to do this, namely, especially for Flashback League, if an area has a specific modifier in it at the time that you want to use, you can always clear out that area. So say we were grinding, these Parandus chests, we could come into this area and we could do that. We could go ahead, clear out the whole area, go back into the Western Forest, hit triangle on that gateway into this area again, into Prisoner's Gate, and start a brand new instance. So that's going to wrap up my top 12. I believe we covered everything that I wanted to cover in the video. Like I said, there are 12 tips there at least. I accidentally combined a few in between and kind of lost count, but they weren't in any particular order anyways. I just wanted to go ahead and share with you some different controls and different options in the game that aren't necessarily described within the game that you may find useful and that may make your playthrough easier and more enjoyable. Just as a reminder, I will be streaming on Twitch tonight at 8:30 Central Time until probably about 9:30 Central Time. I may be ending the stream relatively early tonight as there is a new game that has come out on PC that does not require a high-powered PC for you to play that I kind of want to do a little plug on. I'm not being sponsored or anything like that, but one of my favorite game developers, David Brevik, who most of you have probably played some of his games in the past, he is the main programmer behind the original Diablo, Diablo 2, Marvel Heroes, and Hellgate London. He's made a one-man project called It Lurks Below that released today for its full official release on PC. So I'm hoping to end the Path of Exile stream tonight and then potentially stream some of that game as well. So for any of you who may be interested in it or big fans of David Brevik's previous work, definitely give that a look. I think it'll be a lot of fun. It's going to have a lot of ARPG looting aspects to it, and it's also a lot like Minecraft and Terraria kind of mixed in with that, so it's kind of an interesting little hybrid game. I've seen some videos on it, haven't had a chance to play it yet, so my stream tonight should be more of a reaction video as opposed to anything else. If you're not able to catch the stream on Twitch, much like the Path of Exile stream, I will be posting that here to YouTube, so if you do have interest in that, make sure to check that out. So with that said, thank you again for watching. Hopefully you found some of these tips useful, and hopefully they will help you out, and as I mentioned, make your playthrough more easy and enjoyable. So until next time, may the RNG be with you, always.